going on, Port fans? Welcome back to another video on my channel, and today we're going to be previewing Port Adelaide's round 18 clash against the Richmond Tigers this Saturday afternoon at the MCG at 1:15 p.m. It's going to be a big game for Port Adelaide. A lot is riding on the line, and if it's anything to go by with our roller coaster ride in the last 10 weeks, it's our up week, so we should get the job done. But nonetheless, let's have a look at this game and see what it has to offer and how big the circumstances are for both teams. The Richmond Tigers have been sensational in the last month or so, getting their key players back. Now only missing Nankervis and Rance from their best 22. Their side is starting to form really nicely, and this leads our way into opposition watch for this weekend's game. Richmond have won the last 3 games, beating GWS at the G last week by 27 points. They've just found some form at the moment, and it's really pretty obnoxious considering 2017 they were in the exact same position at 10-6. So they're starting to hit their strides, but they're coming up against a Port Adelaide side that will no doubt be wanting to bounce back from last week's insipid performance against the Brisbane Lions, losing by 48 points. Now, if you look at Richmond, they're 5th on the ladder. They're sitting at 10 wins and 6 losses. It's a game this week that, you know, for some circumstances, if they drop it, top 4 hopes are all but gone. But if they win it, top 4 is very much in their hands. And for a team that's where they were a few weeks ago with injuries and, you know, they were losing games they probably would have won if they had their full strength side, it's quite impressive considering their circumstances. But nonetheless, last time they did play Port Adelaide, they basically had no team and they still won at the Adelaide Oval by 8 points. So it just goes to show that having a great structure, a good coach, and just discipline amongst each other and playing for each other, you can win games no matter how much against the wall you are. Going into some game notes for you at the moment, a couple of stats I've got for you. Robbie Gray averages 15.5 disposals per game against Richmond. So he doesn't like playing the Tigers, but he does hit the scoreboard. He's kicked 21 goals in the last 13 games against the Tigers, so it'll be an interesting one. Another stat, which is probably the biggest of the lot, and this is a very impressive stat from Port Adelaide. We don't play at the MCG too often, but every time we've played Richmond since 1998, we've won. So we haven't lost against the Tigers at the G since 1998. 21 years we haven't lost there against them. That's an enormous stat, and I reckon the club and the team can go into this weekend's game with enormous confidence. We have good MCG form as of late, beating Melbourne in round 1. So very much we'll be looking to continue that stat. But yeah, if you break down the game, you can say all these stats about Port Adelaide, you can say all these stats about the Richmond Tigers, but when it comes down to it, there's only one stat that really matters, and that's the W next to your name at the end of the game. And at the moment, if you consider the form of Port Adelaide and the form of Richmond, these two teams are very much at opposite ends of the scale. But for some reason, this game, it just has that feeling of Port Adelaide are going to get up again. And I don't know what it is. It's just, earlier in the week, I will be honest, I was sitting here thinking, I don't have a good feeling about this. I just have that feeling of the consistency train is going to break and we're going to fall away because it's just gotten to our heads a bit. But I don't know, there's a couple of things. I heard that the training session, Port Adelaide, the main training session they had was just fierce and tough, and they were going at it full match simulation, getting some fitness into the legs and some aggression around the football, and it was just, you know, that gives you a lift type training where I'm ready to go. Put me out there now and I'll play. Richmond, on the other hand, they're just coasting nicely, and I think these two teams play a very similar brand of football. Richmond are more of that pressure, keep attacking the ball and keep attacking the defensive line of the opposition team. Port Adelaide, on the other hand, they play more of a speed. They play that pressure game that Richmond do so well, but Port Adelaide like to pepper the inside 50s. They like to attack the scoreboard, attack the goals, and not too much worry about the opposition while also defending really well. And our back six is held up really well with Tom Clurey and Tommy Jonas down there, DBJ. So they've got their work cut out this week against the likes of Jack Riewoldt and Tom Lynch, who, as a combination, I reckon they're ready to fit and fire. Riewoldt back last week, kicking a couple of goals. Tom Lynch has been in good form as of late, and I think those two together, Jonas, Clurey, they might even throw Howard down there to give him a bit of a chop out because they're going to need it with those two fit and firing. Daniel Rioli down there, Dan Butler looks set to come back in. Josh Caddy may get a chance. They've got these they've just got players everywhere, Richmond, that we're going to have to watch for. It's going to be very much a team-based win if Port Adelaide are to pull the job off, because they've got so much stars. And look at the midfield. You've got Dusty Martin, Trent Cotchin, Lambert, McIntosh. There's players that the names are escaping my head, but they're there and they play a ferocious brand of football. And when they're on, Richmond, very hard to beat. And at the MCG, they've been given the gift of God to play the last 7 games at home. You wouldn't expect them to drop one. But I think Port Adelaide of all teams are the ones that could really give them a run for their money. Speaking of that midfield battle, you got the likes of Boak. You're going to have Sam Powell-Pepper, Rockcliffe, maybe Wines, depending if he comes up from his thumb. But then you have Boak against Cotchin, 2 heavyweight midfielders of the competition. I said it a few weeks ago when Boak versus Fife. They didn't tag each other. They tried to top each other by who was going to have the most influence on the contest. Again, will happen this week. Cotchin's a ball magnet. He's a ferocious tackler. He attacks the ball, gets in there. He's a contested pig. When it comes to getting that contested footy out. Same as Boak. He attacks the ball, but he's a workhorse. He runs. He hits the scoreboard, which is crucial for a midfielder. He attacks the ball. He's a great tackler. Great pressure, but he creates a target. And those two are going to have their work cut out for each other. But I think whoever has the biggest impact in the middle. Boak obviously came back last week. Still had 30 touches from the week before having it off. But he's going to get back into that grind again. And he's just going to work Cotchin around, and I don't think you can tag Boak. It's just he works so hard. Injuries, as I said, for both teams, but I think the big one for Port Adelaide, Ollie Wines, he's found some form in the last 2 weeks against the Crows, and the showdown was brilliant. And then against Brisbane, I thought he was actually the best for Port Adelaide. Some people disagree, but the way he went about it, he was attacking. He defended really well, and I think his aggression around the contest will be missed if he does not play with a thumb fracture that he's had. But yeah, look, this game in particular is a win or bust for Port Adelaide. Richmond can lose and they'll still be in the top 8 and they'll still have an opportunity to maybe make top 4, but their position in the top 8 is essentially almost sealed. They're going to get a couple more wins in the last 6 and they'll play finals. Port Adelaide, on the other hand, are hanging by a thread. They're a game out of the 8, 6 games to go. Pretty tough draw. It's what Port Adelaide wants to turn up this week. I think that's the main question. And if they can turn up and beat Richmond, then the season still goes. It still kicks on. Big opportunity next week against GWS. But it's going to be that type of momentum that Port Adelaide are going to need to continue on. And they must come out firing. The start's all important for Port Adelaide. We saw it last week. Brisbane, they went after the man instead of the ball. They went after the ball without aggression. Port would have won the first quarter. Looking at selection for this week's game, Port Adelaide will no doubt lose Ebert with a PCL injury, which is very unfortunate. Burton's out as well with a hamstring strain, so he'll miss the next month. I don't think Wines will get up. I think that fracture in the thumb may give him a little bit of strife, and I don't think he'll play. In will come Houston, who was laid out last week due to being sick, so he'll come in and play probably a predominant midfield role. Dersma will come in as well after being apparently dropped, which was a disgraceful decision. But he'll come back in, provide a bit of speed. And Broadbent will be back. I think his form in the SANFL 38 disposals last week for the Magpies. No doubt getting him a spot back in the side with Burton going out. Prediction, Port fans, as much as I'd love to tip Port and hope they do win, I think Richmond might just have our number. Tigers by 18 points in a tight one at the G. It's going to be a perfect day though. Something brewing. I think we might be able to upset the Tigers, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to go with the Tigers to win. Well, Port fans, that wraps up this round 18 preview. And if you are a Richmond fan and you have watched this and would like to comment what you think of this weekend's game, let me know below. Let me know as well, Port fans, what you're thinking about this game, who you're tipping, what's going to be the biggest influence of this week. It's going to be a massive game this Saturday afternoon. I'm very much looking forward to it. If you don't have Foxtel or at the game, it's going to be a delayed telecast. So get down to the Port Club perhaps, or maybe get the AFL Live app or something like that. Just make sure, get on the radio and just follow it, because you won't be able to watch it on TV. So that is just a quick tip for you for this weekend's game. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new for plenty more Port Adelaide content coming your way on a weekly basis. My name is Anthony, and as always, Port fans, come on!